In episode 33, the story begins late at night in Chitara's room of Cat's lair. Well, Chitara doesn't know it yet, but she was awakened by the voice of a mysterious stranger that just appeared to her in her room inside of her mirror. So after she woke up, she couldn't help but see the sight of the stranger, and he just introduced himself as Wizz-Ra. So after Wizz-Ra had told Cheetara that he'll be back, and so he disappeared back into the mirror. Oh, it is confirmed before the episode began it was not exactly her first visit, but it's her second. We're not so sure when the first visit came to play, but anyway, after learning about the second visit from Wizra, she's now left to wonder if she should tell her friends or not. Then she started to have a second thought to say even if she told her friends about it, they'll just laugh at her and dismiss her. So she decides to think nothing of it and decides to go back to sleep, so that's what she did. But what Chitara doesn't know is that someone was watching her in the Black Pyramid's Tomb Chamber's cauldron, and that would be Mumm-ra and Sly, the leader of the mutants. Now, Mumm-ra had just told Sly that Wizra has appeared to Chitara for the second time. So, aha, you know what this means. Mumm-ra just told Sly that he has a plan the next time that he comes for the third time. So Sly, the leader of the mutants, was asking Mumm-ra, what are you talking about? So Mumm-ra had to explain to Sly that for 700 years, Wizra has been trapped in the seventh dimension. So, according to Mumm-ra, it is now time for him to be set free from the seventh dimension, he said. So Sly wanted to know from Mumm-ra, who is Wizra anyway? Well, Mumm-ra was more than happy to explain. He said that Wizra is said to be the most powerful sorcerer of all time, from the ancient days, he said. But according to Mumm-ra, what he says in his case that for too long Wizra has been fighting for the forces of good. Above all, according to him, there is one thing that Mumm-ra must want really desperate and pretty bad. A helmet that says to be the most powerful of all time, he said. So flashback 7,000 years ago, according to what Mumm-ra said to Slythe in the present scene, that was the first time that he and Wizra had ever met. According to him, he'd been wanting that magical helmet of Vanur that Wizra wears, and why is that? Because according to Mumm-ra, it is said to help Wizra read people's minds and have control of it. Also, according to Mumm-ra, when he explains further, he said that he and Wizra had a magical combat with each other. And so the battle went on and on and on and on and on. But then during the battle, long story short, things didn't look so good for Wizra. His boat is now out of control because his sail is on fire and it's about to crash. And if things couldn't get any worse, what Mumm-ra did was unbelievable. He decided to attack the Sphinx. So after Wizra's boat crashed and Wizra's now on the ground, but the Sphinx had no idea that Wizra didn't attack the Sphinx and that Mumm-ra did. So, Mumm-ra explains further in the present scene it's because that Mumm-ra had attacked the Sphinx first and not Wizra, so by mistake, and because of the Sphinx attack, it thought that Wizra attacked it. So as punishment, he was exiled to the seventh dimension where he remains since. So back to the present in the tomb chamber of the Black Pyramid. Mumm-ra had explained to Sly, the leader of the mutants, further that every 7,000 years since, Wizra had appeared in a dimensional prison. So now, according to what Mumm-ra said, it has been 7,000 years since Wizra has been trapped in the seventh dimension. He can only be on third for one day. So when the time came, and of course it did, it'll be Mumm-ra's chance to take the golden helmet away from him. That's said to have the most greatest power to control people's minds. But according to Mumm-ra, when he explains further to Slice, here comes a problem. Since 30 episodes ago, the Thundercats have built a cast layer on top of his dimensional prison, and there's only one place that where Wizra can go, through Chitara's bedroom mirror. That's what we saw in the beginning of the episode. So Slice, who agrees with what Mumm-ra said, he says, "You're right, that is a problem." But that doesn't mean aha. Mumm-ra said that that problem's been solved because, as always, he has a plan. So you're probably wondering what was Mumm-ra's plan? Well, why not have one cheetah to snare another, he thought. And then he explained the slide that once that cheetah is doing a favor for Mumm-ra, which of course will come later, that means, well, it can mean bad news for Wizz-Ra. So, meanwhile, back in Cheetara's room at Cat's lair, before Cheetara could head off to bed, she was looking at the mirror and she couldn't help but think to herself, is she going to have that strange dream again, just like she did 2 nights ago? Well, I guess you could say there was only one way for her to find out, so she goes to sleep in her bed. But once again, just like she did in the last 2 nights, she had no idea that someone was watching her, and that would be Slythe and Mumm-ra. So back at the Pyramid's tomb chamber, one of the first things that Mumm-ra did was to go to the same Chia statue. And what did he do? He decided to bring it to life, and so that's what he did. So back when it found a cheetah that was brought to life thanks to Mumm-ra, that's when Mumm-ra told it, I have a favor for you. Go to Cheetara's room at Cat's lair and fetch something for me. Wizz-Ra's helmet, he said. And after that, you bring it right to me, Mumm-ra said. So the feta cheetah was more than happy to do this favor, so he heads off to Cat's lair. So meanwhile, back at Cat's lair, the Fajita cheetah that just was brought to life by Mumm-ra had just left the tomb chamber earlier. He's now on his mission. So long story short, after the cheetah comes up to the window of Chitara's bedroom, one of the first things that it did next was to go inside Chitara's room. So that's what it did. So now that the cheetah had possessed Chitara, which she's not aware of because she was still sleeping at the time, back with Wizz-Ra, he appeared for the third time in Chitara's bedroom mirror and he just pleaded the case to say now it's been 7,000 years since he's trapped in the seventh dimension. Now it's his time to be set free. Also, even better, as Wizz-Ra continues to plead a case to say, thanks to the Thundercats, they will help him get rid of Mumm-Ra once and for all, or at least that was the case. One of the first things that Wizz-Ra did was to project himself out of the mirror and commanded Cheetara to get out of bed, but by as soon as she did, what Wizz-Ra doesn't even realize, remember the Feta cheetah that Wizz-Ra doesn't even realize that possessed Cheetara? Well, it just appeared out of nowhere and snatches Wizz-Ra's helmet. And why is that? Well, for one thing, Wizz-Ra should have realized that it was all part of Mumm-Ra's plan. So back with Wizz-Ra, he tried to stop the cheetah from getting away, but unfortunately he's unsuccessful. So Cheetara's resting on the floor for a while, unconscious. So what Wizz-Ra did is that he ran out of Cheetara's room, and when he ran into the hallway, he ran into Snarf, who was there on the scene. So when Snarf says, hold it right there, but Wizard chose to ignore Snarf and attacks him instead. So Snarf was telling Lionel and Snarf to come help him right away. Well, Lionel's voice comes out of nowhere to say, just a minute here, stranger. And so after Lionel arrived on the scene and asked Wizard, who are you? What's going on here? But before that can happen, that's when Wizard says, so you must be Lionel. You're right the first time, Lionel said. So Wizard explains to Lionel what's going on. He said, listen, I'm not an enemy. I mean you no harm. I have bad news. Just moments ago, my helmet's been stolen, so now I had to get it back, Wizard said. Then Wizard continues to plead a case to Lionel. Well, now thanks to you, and you delayed me here. By now, the helmet's probably in the wrong hands because of that creep Mumm-ra, he said. Well, unfortunately for Wizard, he was soon proven right when, meanwhile, at the Black Pyramid's tomb chamber, that's when the Vegeta cheetah came back with a helmet that used to belong to Wizard, but not anymore. But Mumm-Ra's not alone because, like the leader of the mutants, he was also there. So before the Vegeta cheetah becomes a statue again, that's when Mumm-Ra passes and says, you've done the job well. So after the cheetah heads off, it went back into a statue. So Back with Mumm-ra, now that he's got the helmet that he's been wanting to get for the last 7,000 years, and now that he has, he just couldn't wait to try it out. So he puts it on first, and then he pleads his case to say, "At last I have mind control," and etc. But then Sly the little mutant said, "Wait a minute, what about Wizz-Ra? He's gonna try to get the helmet back. He may want to try to use his powers against you," he said. "That's true," Mumm-ra said. "He has only 1 day to try to get it back," Mumm-ra said. And so to demonstrate, that's when Mumm-ra pleaded his case with Sly to say, "See that Raven King over there? He said that the morning sun so far is now on the left eye of the king statue itself." And then Mumm-ra says, "But once the sun hits the right eye, that means the day is over," Mumm-ra said. So, also according to Mumm-ra, what he says in his case, that's how much time that Wizz-Ra's going to have in order to get his helmet back, he said. But in the meantime, according to Mumm-ra, he and Slythe have to find out what the Thundercats and Wizz-Ra are going to do next. So, in the cauldron of the tomb chamber, what they saw was Lionel, Wizz-Ra, and Cheetara that is now in bed sleeping, and Snarf, who is also with Wizz-Ra and Lionel, are watching over her, wondering what they're going to do about it. Well, according to Wizz-Ra, he just let slip to Lionel that the reason why she's in the church just now, according to Lionel, is that she's under Mumm-Ra's spell. Then Wizz-Ra also let slip to tell Lionel that unless he has his helmet back, it was the only way to break the trance from Mumm-Ra's spell to wake up Cheetara. In that case, Lionel agrees to help out Wizz-Ra. "Okay," Wizard says, "but I think it's only fair to warn you, you don't stand a chance against the helmet's power. You'll be powerless," he said. "Don't worry," Lionel says. "I got the sword of omens that can handle anything," he said. So, Lionel, Wizard, and Snarf had left the cat's lair. Back at the pyramid's tomb chamber, Mumm-ra now realizes that the trio might be showing up at any moment. I'm talking about Lionel, Wizard, and Snarf. So, meanwhile, the Black Pyramid, back with the good guys, they had just arrived at the Black Pyramid outside. So, long story short, after Lionel, Wizard, and Snarf had dodged the pyramid's attacks, that's when Lionel saw up above Mumm-ra and with Wizz-Ra's helmet on. But he's not alone because Slide, the leader of the mutants, is there with him too. So, what Mumm-ra did first is that he commands the ancient helmet to grant him his power over for mind control, and so it did. And so after that, Mumm-ra and Lionel went one-on-one with each other into battle, if you will. So long story short, after Lionel and Mumm-ra had that battle for a while, Wizard knew that he needed some assistance, so he did something that he never did before. He created a shield to protect Lionel the best way he knew how. But unfortunately, long story short, Wizard's shield didn't last for very long. And then finally the helmet's power went into Lionel's head, so he's in mind control of Mumm-ra's. But before the mind control can happen, that's when Lionel did what a good guy would do. Project the Thundercat signal from his sword, of course, and so he did. So, after summoning the Thundercat signal back with Lionel, he finally collapsed on the ground. However, Snarf was in shock. He just couldn't believe it. Meanwhile, Panthro in the Thunder Tank was the first to see the Thundercat signal first. Next is Tigra. He also saw the signal. The last two to see it were the Thunderkins, and they're at the Rober village. So meanwhile, back at the pyramid with Snarf, Wizz-Ra, and Lino, and things don't look so good for Lino. Until when Snarf finally wakes him up, that's when Lino says that only Mumm-Ra can command him. Panicked, that's when Snarf told Wizz-Ra to do something about it. So Wizz-Ra and Snarf looked over their shoulders as Mumm-Ra, and he just told Lionel to get rid of the sword into the desert of Seeking Sands, and so that's what Lionel did. And the Sword of Omens disappeared into the desert of Seeking Sands. Then Mumm-Ra said to Lionel that he has a message for him. Unfortunately, it was never said, but what Lionel did was unbelievable. He decided to look at Wizard and Snarf. So, Snarf just couldn't believe what was going on. So, back with Lionel, he was about to attack Wizra, but Wizra does what he knows best. He uses his power. And then Lionel stopped attacking and froze just like a statue. So Snarf says, "What have you done? What did you do?" Then back with Slythe, the leader of the Moons, and along with Mumm-ra, that's when Slythe had pleaded a case to say that there is no way that Lionel has a chance against the wizard. That's true, Mumm-ra says, but every time Wizz-Ra uses his power, it gets weaker by the minute, Mumm-ra said. So as Mumm-ra explains further how the time is growing shorter by the minute every time the sunlight moves inside the tomb chamber, well, so far, it's in the middle of the Raven King's head. That means it's not to the right eye yet. So meanwhile, back with Lionel, Snarf, and Wizra, who are still outside the pyramid, when Snarf asks Wizra to change him back, and of course, Wizard said that he can't. And the reason why he said that is because Wizard just pleaded the case to say, if I had, then Lionel would have attacked me, he said. So, after Wizard had pleaded the case to say we must do what we can to get the helmet back, that's when Panther and the Thunder Tank shows up. And he arrives at the exact same pyramids Wizard, Snarf, and Lionel did. So by the time that both Panther and the Thunder Tank had arrived on the scene, that's when Snarf tried to warn Panther. He said, "Stay back! The helmet's powers are extremely dangerous," he said. So Panther did what any good guy would do. He used his Thunder Tank to dodge the helmet's powers the best way it knew how, and so did Panther. That was until, long story short, when Mumm-ra uses the helmet's power again, it did the same thing to Panther as it did to Lionel. So now Panther's under the mind control of Mumm-ra's, just like what Lionel did. So, back with Snarf and Wizard, that's when Snarf says, "Oh no!" So, just like what Panther did to Wizard, it's now his turn to challenge him, just like what Mumm-ra commanded him to. So, that's what Panther did. So, just like what Wizard did to Lionel, he uses his power, and he too froze like a statue, like Lionel did. Oh, before I go any further, the reason why Panther froze is because he's all tied up in his own nunchucks thanks to Wizra. So anyway, back with Wizra, he just told Snark that unless he has his helmet back, all the Thundercats will be under Mumm-ra's control, and that would be bad news. So meanwhile, back with Mumm-ra and Slide, by the time they turned around, they saw Tigra heading their way. And just like what Panther and Lionel did, he too arrived at the pyramid. But then he too was under mind control, just like what two of the Thundercats did. So, Tigra did the same thing as the two Thundercats did, go one-on-one with Wizra. However, Wizra tries to fight off against Tiger the best way he knew how, and he did the same thing as the Thundercats did, by using the bully whip to tie up Tigra, and so after that power that Wizraw used, Tiger froze like a statue just like the two Thundercats did. So, back with Snarf and Wizraw, now Snarf can tell that things don't look so good for him. So he told Wizraw, "You can't quit now! Not yet!" But Wizraw said that there's a problem. Every time he uses his powers, he gets weaker and weaker by the minute. So long story short, back with Slythe and Mumm-ra, they saw that the Thunderkins are heading in the exact same direction as the three Thundercats did. So, when Wizraw and Snarf saw that the Thunderkids are coming, they too arrived at the exact same scene as the three Thundercats did. But unfortunately for the Thunderkins, they were unsuccessful to avoid the Dynamo's power, so they did the exact same thing as the three Thundercats did. They too were under the mind control of Mumm-ra's. So the Thunderkins go one-on-one with Wizra just like what the three Thundercats did. So just like what the three Thundercats did, but even different, Wizra turned the Thunderkins' ropes into chains. So it was because of the chains that causes the Thunderkins' spaceports to crash. So finally, Wizra was exhausting all of his powers according to what Mumm-ra said. And if things weren't bad enough, according to what Mumm-ra said, when meanwhile the tomb chamber, that's when the sunlight is almost at the right eye of the Raven King and then pleads his case to say that Wizz-Ra will return to the seventh dimension once the day is over. Also, as Mumm-ra says in his case, though, he'll have to return without his helmet. Well, Slythe has his turn to ask a question. What about Cheetara? What are we going to do about it? Well, Mumm-ra says, unfortunately for her, she's helpless because, as we last saw her, she was still in her room at Castler, asleep in her bed, and she's still in a trance. So, unfortunately for her, unless she wakes up, it'll be bad news, and that the bad guys will win for sure. So the next morning at Castler, now don't ask me how Cheetara got out of the trance, but she meets up with Wizz-Ra and Snarf. So by the time they arrive, she asks, what happened? Where's Lino? Where are the others? But just when Snarf was about to tell her the bad news, that's when Wizz-Ra just accidentally let slip to Cheetara that because of Mumm-ra's overconfidence, he had just relapsed his spell, means that's why Cheetara's trance was broken. So now it's up to her to save her friends. So the only thing left to do is to go back to the pyramid. So that's what the three of them did. So meanwhile, at the Black Pyramid's tomb chamber, we have Sly, the leader of the mutants, Mumm-ra, and the enslaved Thundercats, all five of them to be exact, still under Mumm-ra's mind control because of that helmet he had stolen earlier. So meanwhile, back with Wizz-Ra, Snarf, and Cheetara, who had just left the lair earlier, they had just arrived at the Black Pyramid. So, after they arrived, that's when Cheetara had an idea to put Snarf inside of the vent. So, once Snarf is inside, he found the controls for the door. So he lets in Cheetara and Wizz-Ra. So now that everyone's inside of the tomb chamber, so now it's up to Cheetara to come up with a plan. So you're probably wondering what was Cheetara's plan to trick Mumm-ra, of course, and how? Well, she told Wizz-Ra and Snarf that she's going to move that Raven King statue over so that Mumm-ra will think that the day was over when the sunlight hits the right eye so that he can take the helmet off. So that's what she did. So Slythe wanted to know from Mumm-ra if he felt anything. And then Mumm-ra pleased his case to say that he felt absolutely nothing. Of course, when Mumm-ra looked at the Raven King statue and thought that the day was over, so he decided to take off the helmet. At least that's what he told Slythe. But they didn't have any idea that it was just a trick, thanks to Cheetara. So now that's finished, now it's up to Snark to snatch the helmet away, which he did, and then give it right back to Wizz-Ra. So after Cheetara catches it, so when Slythe turns around to see that the helmet was missing, that made Mumm-ra upset. Then Wizz-Ra appears to let slip in front of Mumm-ra that yes, it's true, he got his helmet back. Then Mumm-ra tries to plead a case to say that the time was up and the day was over. Not yet it isn't, Wizz-Ra said. And guess what Wizz-Ra did next? He decided to set the Thundercats free from his helmet's power, from his mind control, and so he did. So now, thanks to Wizz-Ra, the Thundercats are finally free from the helmet's power and the mind control. So it's now Wizz-Ra's turn to take care of both Mumm-ra and Slythe. Though it is confirmed that thanks to Wizz-Ra, Slythe's back to Castle Plondar, and as for Mumm-ra, he went back to his sarcophagus. So yes, thanks to Wizz-Ra, he not only get his helmet back, but everything is now back to normal. And now that the Thundercats are finally free, it was now time for Wizard to get back to the dimensional prison before the day was over. So that's what happened. So while the rest of Chitara's friends stayed behind at the pyramid, she rushes Wizard back to Castler and into her bedroom. So meanwhile there, Chitara not only helps Wizard get there back in the mirror just in time too, but before he can head off, what Chitara wanted to know from him is she would see him again. He said only in your dreams, Chitara. So finally Wizra stepped right into the mirror, right after he thanked Chitara for everything that her and her friends did. So now that she's back with her friends, meanwhile at the desert of Seeking Sands, oh, and as for Lionel's sword, well, he did what any good guy would do. call it to return it to his hand, in which he did. So good news now that Lionel got his sword back. It's now Chitara's turn to apologize. The reason why she's apologizing to everyone, she says, well, when Wizz-Ra came to my room, I was afraid to share my information with you. And I'm also afraid that I'd be laughed at and dismissed. So for that, according to her, she says, had she had shared her information with them and trusted them more, then none of the would have happened and none of her friends wouldn't be in this mess. Well, Lionel has his turn to plead his case to Chitara that there's nothing to apologize for and what happened was in the past. Even though Lionel earlier had agreed with Cheetara that everything turned out alright the way it did. So Lionel not only forgives Cheetara but says that in the future we shouldn't hold anything back, so we wouldn't be afraid of anything, he said. And that's something that Lionel could agree with, and everyone else. Because, and Lionel's not kidding when he said it was all part of being a team. So that ends episode 33.